Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm delighted to see so many faces here, each representing a unique story, a unique set of relationships, and a unique way of being in the world. Today, I would like to speak with you about something fundamental to human existence, our relationships with one another. The title of our discussion today is The Interconnected Self. And I chose this because I believe it captures the essence of what it means to be human. We do not exist in isolation. We are always inevitably in relationship with others, and it is through these relationships that we find meaning, purpose, and either happiness or unhappiness in our lives. Consider for a moment the most profound joys and the deepest sorrows you have experienced. Were they not, almost invariably, connected to your relationships with others? The birth of a child, falling in love, the loss of a loved one, the betrayal of trust. These relationship experiences shape our emotional landscapes more than any material success or failure ever could. What I hope to convey today is that by understanding the nature of our relationships, their patterns, their challenges, their possibilities, we gain insight not only into others, but into ourselves. And through this understanding, we open pathways to greater fulfillment, greater contribution, and yes, greater happiness. Let me begin with a proposition that might seem bold. All human problems are, at their core, interpersonal relationship problems. This may sound like an oversimplification, but I ask you to consider it carefully. When a person comes to me in distress, they might speak of anxiety, depression, career dissatisfaction, or a sense of emptiness. But when we delve deeper, we invariably find that these feelings are rooted in how they relate to others. The person suffering from anxiety is often anxious about how they are perceived by others. The depressed individual frequently feels disconnected from community. The career dissatisfied person may be struggling with relationships of authority or cooperation at work. Even physical ailments can be understood, in many cases, as expressions of relationship difficulties. The body often manifests what the mind cannot process or articulate about our connections with others. Let me offer some examples to illustrate this point. A young man comes to therapy complaining of insomnia. As we explore his situation, we discover that he lies awake worrying about his performance at work, fearing the judgment of his supervisor and colleagues. His insomnia is not merely a sleep disorder. It is a manifestation of relationship anxiety. A woman struggles with chronic headaches. Medical tests reveal no physical cause. In our conversations, it emerges that she is in a marriage where she feels unheard and undervalued, yet she cannot bring herself to express her true feelings to her husband. Her headaches speak what her voice cannot. A child develops behavioral problems at school, disrupting class and refusing to complete assignments. We learn that his parents are in constant conflict at home, and he has unconsciously adopted the role of problem child to unite his parents in concern for him rather than in anger at each other. His school difficulties are an expression of family relationship dynamics. In each case, what appears on the surface to be an individual problem, insomnia, headaches, behavioral issues, is revealed as a relationship problem. The symptoms are signals, calling attention to disconnections, conflicts, or imbalances in how these individuals relate to significant others in their lives. So you see, by understanding our relationships, we understand ourselves. By healing our relationships, we heal ourselves. Before we delve further into the dynamics of relationships, I must emphasize a principle that is fundamental to my approach. In all human relationships, we are all equal, but we are not the same. What do I mean by this seeming paradox? By equality, I refer to the inherent worth and dignity of each human being. No person is inherently more valuable than another. No child's life is worth more than another's. No race, gender, or social class confers greater human worth. This equality is not earned or achieved. It is inherent in our humanity. Yet while we are equal in worth, we are magnificently diverse in our attributes, talents, interests, and paths. One person may excel in mathematics, while another has a profound gift for music. One may find joy in solitude and reflection, while another thrives in community and conversation. One may contribute through leadership, another through nurturing, another through creating, another through healing. This principle, equal but not the same, has profound implications for our relationships. In parenting, it means that while the parent has greater experience and responsibility, the child is not a lesser being. The child's perspective, feelings, and dignity deserve equal respect. The parent guides not from superiority, but from a place of responsibility and care. In intimate partnerships, it means that different roles and contributions do not imply hierarchy of worth. The partner who earns more money is not more valuable than the one who manages the home. The one who speaks eloquently is not superior to the one who listens deeply. In workplace relationships, it means that while organizational structures may require different levels of decision-making authority, every worker's contribution is worthy of recognition and respect. The executive and the custodian are different but equal in their humanity. In friendships, it means embracing the differences that make each person unique, while maintaining mutual respect and consideration. True friendship celebrates uniqueness rather than demanding sameness. When we confuse equality with sameness, we distort our relationships. We either expect others to be just like us, denying their uniqueness, or we use differences to establish hierarchies of worth, violating the principle of fundamental equality. Remember, equal in worth, unique in being. This is the foundation upon which healthy relationships are built. Now let me introduce a concept that is central to understanding the dynamics of human relationships: horizontal versus vertical relationships. Vertical relationships are characterized by hierarchy, power differentials, and often by feelings of superiority and inferiority. In a vertical relationship, one person positions themselves above or below another. The parent who demands unquestioning obedience from a child establishes a vertical relationship. The spouse who believes they are entitled to make decisions for their partner creates a vertical dynamic. The boss who rules through intimidation rather than collaboration enforces verticality. Horizontal relationships, by contrast, are built on mutual respect, equality, and cooperation. In a horizontal relationship, power is shared, decisions are collaborative, and each person's dignity is honored. The parent who guides while respecting their child's autonomy, the spouses who decide together, the leader who empowers their team, all these exemplify horizontal relationships. Most of us have been conditioned to function primarily in vertical relationships. Our educational systems, many family structures, and traditional workplaces often operate vertically. But I propose to you that true fulfillment comes through horizontal relationships. Let me elaborate on how these relationship patterns manifest in different contexts. In families, vertical relationships often take the form of authoritarian parenting, where children are expected to obey without question. "Because I said so" is the justification for rules, and children learn that their worth is tied to their compliance. In contrast, horizontal family relationships involve age-appropriate explanation of rules, consideration of children's perspectives, and mutual respect, even during disagreement. In romantic relationships, verticality might appear as one partner consistently making decisions about finances, social activities, or household matters without genuine consultation. The other partner may accept this arrangement out of fear, habit, or a belief in their own lesser competence. Horizontal romantic relationships involve shared decision-making, mutual vulnerability, and recognition of each partner's equal right to influence the relationship's direction. In friendships, verticality often manifests as one friend consistently determining when, where, and how interactions occur. The dominant friend's needs and preferences take priority, while the subordinate friend adapts and accommodates. Horizontal friendships feature reciprocity, a balanced give and take of attention, support, and influence. In professional relationships, vertical dynamics are often institutionalized in hierarchical structures. However, even within these structures, interactions can be conducted horizontally through active listening, acknowledgement of contributions at all levels, and decision-making processes that incorporate diverse perspectives. Think about your most satisfying connections. Aren't they the ones where you feel truly seen, heard, and valued as an equal, where you can express yourself authentically without fear of judgment or rejection? These are horizontal relationships. The shift from vertical to horizontal relating doesn't mean abandoning all structure or leadership. It means transforming how we exercise leadership and structure. It means leading not to dominate, but to facilitate. It means creating structures that serve all members of the relationship, not just those in positions of traditional power. Why do we so often fall into vertical relationship patterns? The answer lies in what I call the inferiority complex and the striving for superiority. Every human being from earliest childhood experiences feelings of inferiority. This is natural and unavoidable. As children, we are indeed smaller, weaker, less knowledgeable than the adults around us. But these early experiences of comparative inadequacy can crystallize into an inferiority complex, a pervasive feeling that we are somehow not enough, not worthy, not deserving of respect and love. Let me describe how this inferiority feeling develops. The infant, utterly dependent on caregivers, experiences a natural state of helplessness. As the child grows, they become increasingly aware of their limitations compared to adults and even older children. I cannot reach that shelf. I cannot cross the street alone. I cannot read those words. Each discovery of inability reinforces a sense of comparative smallness. This feeling of inferiority is not inherently problematic. In fact, it serves as a motivational force, driving the child to develop, to learn, to grow. The natural response to inferiority feelings is to strive to overcome them, to reach for capabilities not yet possessed. However, when these natural inferiority feelings are compounded by excessive criticism, unrealistic expectations, conditional love, or outright rejection, they can solidify into what I call an inferiority complex. The child begins to believe not just I cannot do this yet, but I am fundamentally inadequate. I am less worthy than others. To compensate for these painful feelings, many people develop a striving for superiority. They seek to elevate themselves above others, to prove their worth through achievement, status, wealth, or power over others. This creates the vertical relationships I described earlier. The striving for superiority manifests in countless ways. The student who must have the highest grades, not for the joy of learning, but to prove their intelligence. The professional who pursues promotions and titles, not for the satisfaction of contribution, but for the status they confer. The parent who micromanages their child's life, not to support the child's development, but to prove their own parental excellence. The partner who must always be right in arguments, not to find truth, but to establish dominance. Each of these patterns represents a misguided attempt to overcome feelings of inferiority through comparison and competition, rather than through cooperation and contribution. But this is a misguided solution. True overcoming of inferiority comes not through superiority over others, but through contribution to others, not through competition, but through cooperation, not through vertical relationships, but through horizontal ones. When we contribute, when we add value to our relationships, our workplaces, our communities, we experience a sense of significance that doesn't require diminishing others. We discover that our worth is not comparative but inherent, demonstrated through what we give rather than how we rank. Our tendency toward either vertical or horizontal relationships is profoundly influenced by our earliest relational experiences. Though we may not consciously remember our first years of life, these formative interactions create what I call our style of life, our fundamental beliefs about ourselves, others, and how relationships work. Consider how early family dynamics shape our relational expectations. A child whose expressions of emotion are consistently met with dismissal, stop crying, don't be angry, learns that authentic self-expression endangers relationships. This child may grow into an adult who either suppresses their own needs, inferiority, or dismisses the emotions of others, superiority. A child who witnesses one parent consistently deferring to the other's judgment learns that relationships require one person to submit and another to dominate. This child may unconsciously recreate this vertical pattern in their adult relationships, either as the dominant or submissive partner. A child whose parents offer praise only for achievements, not for effort or character, learns that their value is contingent on performance. This child may develop a relentless drive to prove their worth through accomplishment, creating vertical relationships where others are measured by the same exacting standards. Conversely, more horizontal early experiences foster different relational patterns. A child whose feelings are acknowledged as valid, even when their behavior must be corrected. I understand you're angry, but we don't hit. Learns that emotions can be expressed within the context of mutual respect. A child who observes parents making important decisions together, each voice valued, develops an expectation of partnership rather than hierarchy in close relationships. A child who is loved for who they are, not just for what they achieve, develops a sense of inherent worth that doesn't depend on superiority to others. I must emphasize that while early experiences are influential, they are not deterministic. Through self-awareness and courage, we can recognize the patterns we've inherited, challenge the limiting beliefs that sustain them, and choose new ways of relating. This is the essence of personal growth and the foundation of therapeutic change. Building horizontal relationships requires courage. Why? Because horizontal relationships involve risk. They require vulnerability. They demand that we present ourselves authentically, without the armor of superiority or the shield of inferiority. In a vertical relationship, ironically, both positions, superior and inferior, offer a kind of safety. The superior position protects us from feeling inadequate. The inferior position protects us from the responsibility of making decisions and facing potential failure. The person who positions themselves as superior, the domineering boss, the controlling parent, the always right partner, avoids the vulnerability of being seen as fallible, wrong, or merely equal. Their superiority is a defense against their own fear of inadequacy. Similarly, the person who positions themselves as inferior The perpetually deferential employee, the overly compliant child, the partner who never expresses preferences, avoids the risks of asserting themselves. Their inferiority is a defense against the responsibility of choice and the possibility of rejection. But in a horizontal relationship, we must stand as equals. We must bring our true selves. We must risk being seen, being rejected, being hurt. And that takes courage. What does this courage look like in practice? It is the courage to express a dissenting opinion, even when others might disagree. It is the courage to admit when you don't know something, rather than pretending expertise. It is the courage to acknowledge your needs and set boundaries, even when doing so might disappoint others. It is the courage to truly listen to feedback without becoming defensive. It is the courage to apologize sincerely when you've made a mistake. It is the courage to be vulnerable about your feelings rather than hiding behind anger or indifference. The courage to be disliked, yes, that's part of it. When we insist on horizontal relationships, we may face resistance from those who are comfortable with verticality. The parent may be disliked by the child who wants more freedom. The partner may be disliked by their spouse who has grown accustomed to making unilateral decisions. The employee may be disliked by the boss who prefers unquestioning obedience. But it also requires the courage to be liked, to be seen, appreciated, and loved for who you truly are. This too can be frightening for many people who believe, deep down, that they are unworthy of genuine affection and respect. This fear of being truly loved may sound paradoxical, but consider, if you believe yourself fundamentally unworthy, then anyone who loves you must either be deceived or deficient in their judgment. Either way, their love seems suspect, untrustworthy. To accept love requires believing yourself lovable, a profound act of courage for those with deep-seated feelings of inferiority. How do we cultivate the courage needed for horizontal relationships? Through what I call community feeling or social interest. Community feeling is the awareness that we are part of something larger than ourselves. It is the recognition that our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others. It is the understanding that through contribution to our community, be it family, workplace, neighborhood, or society at large, we find purpose and meaning. This concept of community feeling is not merely abstract. It has practical implications for how we approach our daily lives. When we recognize our interconnectedness, we naturally move from self-interest to shared interest. We shift from asking, "What's in it for me?" to "How can my actions benefit the whole?" This shift doesn't deny our individual needs, but places them within the context of community well-being. Community feeling manifests in simple yet profound ways. In considering how our choices affect others, not just ourselves. In finding joy in others' successes rather than envy. In working for the improvement of shared conditions, not just personal advantage. In treating public spaces and resources with the same care we would our private possessions. In extending compassion to those who struggle, recognizing that their well-being affects the whole. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's practical psychology. When you wake up tomorrow morning, ask yourself, what can I contribute today? Not, what can I get, or how can I protect myself, but what can I give? This shift in orientation, from taking to giving, from self-focus to community focus, is transformative. It naturally leads to horizontal relationships because it places us in cooperation with others rather than in competition against them. Community feeling doesn't mean self-sacrifice or denial of individual needs. Rather, it's the recognition that our fullest self-realization occurs through contribution to the common good. Just as a musician finds their greatest expression not in playing alone, but in harmonizing with an orchestra, we find our deepest fulfillment not in isolation, but in community. I often speak of the three tasks of life: work, friendship, and love. These are the domains in which we must establish healthy relationships to live fulfilled lives. In work, we find purpose through contribution. Meaningful work is never merely about earning money or achieving status. It's about adding value to the community through our efforts. When we approach work with this mindset, we naturally develop more horizontal relationships with colleagues, supervisors, and those we serve. Consider how different work becomes when viewed through the lens of contribution rather than competition. The colleague's success becomes a source of celebration rather than threat. Collaboration replaces rivalry. Leadership becomes service rather than dominance. The measure of success shifts from "am I ahead of others" to "have I contributed value?" This doesn't mean abandoning ambition or excellence. Quite the contrary. When freed from the energy-draining competition of vertical relationships, we often find greater creative capacity and productivity. The focus shifts from proving our worth to expressing our capabilities in service of shared goals. In friendship, we learn to relate as equals. True friendship cannot exist in a vertical relationship. It requires mutual respect, reciprocity, and genuine care for the other's well-being. Through friendship, we practice the skills of horizontal relationship. Friendship is perhaps our purest opportunity to experience horizontal relating. Unlike family relationships, which often begin with inherent power differentials, parent-child, and unlike romantic relationships, which may be complicated by various dependencies, friendships are entered freely and maintained by mutual choice. In healthy friendships, we experience the balance of giving and receiving. We learn to respect differences without judgment. We practice the vulnerable sharing of our authentic selves. We develop the capacity to rejoice in another's good fortune without envy, and to offer support during difficulty without condescension. And in love, romantic love, familial love, we face perhaps our greatest relationship challenge, for it is here that our early experiences of relationship, our tendencies towards superiority or inferiority, our capacity for courage are most intensely tested. Many romantic relationships begin in the excitement of horizontal connection, only to gradually slide into verticality as insecurities emerge, as the desire for control asserts itself, as courage falters. Sustaining love requires a commitment to horizontality even when it would be easier, safer feeling to fall into superior or inferior positions. In the family, too, love is tested by the daily challenges of living together. Parents must navigate the apparent contradiction of having responsibility for their children's well-being while respecting their equal dignity as human beings. Siblings must learn to appreciate differences without rivalry. Extended family members must negotiate boundaries while maintaining connection. Across all three tasks, work, friendship, and love, the principles remain consistent. Respect for equality and dignity despite differences in role or ability. Courage to be authentic. Commitment to contribution rather than competition. And recognition of our fundamental interconnectedness. To understand relationship dynamics more deeply, we must consider what motivates human behavior. Unlike many of my contemporaries who look to the past for causative explanations, I emphasize the role of purpose and goals in shaping behavior. This teleological approach, looking to the purpose behavior serves rather than only its historical causes, offers powerful insights into relationship patterns. What I call fictional finalism is the idea that human behavior is guided not only by objective reality, but by subjective perceptions and goals. We act not according to what is, but according to what we believe and what we aim to achieve. These subjective goals shape how we interpret our experiences and how we respond to them. In relationships, fictional finalism manifests in the private logic that governs our interactions. Consider a few examples. A person who believes, "If I allow myself to be vulnerable, I will be hurt," will behave in ways that maintain emotional distance, even in potentially loving relationships. A person who believes, "I must be perfect to be accepted," will exhaust themselves trying to meet impossible standards and will struggle to accept imperfection in others. A person who believes conflict always leads to abandonment will avoid expressing dissatisfaction, even when doing so would strengthen the relationship. These beliefs, these fictional finalisms, were often formed in childhood based on limited experience, but continue to shape adult relationships until brought to conscious awareness and challenged. Understanding the purposive nature of behavior transforms how we interpret relationship difficulties. The partner who starts arguments before important events isn't just being difficult. They may be unconsciously creating distance to protect against possible disappointment. The colleague who takes credit for others' work isn't merely selfish. They may be driven by a deep fear that their own contributions are insufficient. The friend who never asks for help isn't simply independent. They may be protecting themselves against potential rejection or judgment. By recognizing the purpose behavior serves, we can address the underlying beliefs and goals rather than merely reacting to the behavior itself. This awareness allows for more compassionate, effective responses to relationship challenges. Building on the concept of fictional finalism, let's explore how specific goals shape our relationship behaviors. All behavior in relationships serves a purpose. It is an attempt to achieve certain aims, whether or not we're consciously aware of these aims. 4 common goals in relationships are attention, the desire to be noticed, to matter to others; power, the desire to have influence, to be in control; revenge, the desire to get back at others for perceived wrongs; withdrawal, the desire to avoid further hurt by disengaging. These goals often operate outside our awareness, yet they powerfully shape our interactions. Let me illustrate with examples. A child who feels overlooked might misbehave to gain attention. Even negative attention, being scolded, confirms they matter enough to provoke a response. This pattern can persist into adulthood, with individuals creating drama or crisis to ensure they remain central in others' awareness. A person seeking power might become controlling in relationships, making unilateral decisions, criticizing others' choices, or using emotional manipulation to maintain dominance. This behavior often stems from deep feelings of powerlessness rather than innate authoritarianism. Someone pursuing revenge might repeatedly bring up past wrongs, engage in passive-aggressive behavior, or sabotage shared plans. These actions, while destructive, serve the purpose of balancing perceived injustice. In withdrawal, a person disengages emotionally or physically from relationships where they feel inadequate or hurt. By withdrawing, they protect themselves from further pain, but also forfeit the possibility of connection. Recognizing these goal-directed patterns in ourselves and others doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but offers a starting point for change. Once we understand what purpose a behavior serves, we can work toward meeting that underlying need in more constructive ways. Instead of seeking attention through drama, we can learn to express our need for acknowledgement directly. Instead of controlling others to feel powerful, We can develop internal resources for self-efficacy. Instead of seeking revenge, we can address hurts through honest communication and boundary setting. Instead of withdrawing, we can learn to remain present while protecting our emotional well-being. This shift from unconscious, often counterproductive behavioral patterns to conscious, constructive choices is the essence of personal growth and relationship healing. In all relationships, whether parent-child, romantic partnerships, friendships, or professional connections, encouragement is essential for growth and well-being. But what exactly is encouragement, and how does it differ from mere praise? Praise focuses on outcomes and achievements. Great job getting an A. You look so beautiful in that dress. Your presentation was impressive. While praise has its place, it inadvertently reinforces the belief that worth comes from performance or appearance, external measures rather than intrinsic value. Encouragement, by contrast, recognizes effort, progress, and character. I noticed how hard you studied for that test. You chose an outfit that really expresses your personality. The research you put into that presentation showed real commitment. The difference is subtle but profound. Praise creates dependency on external validation. Encouragement fosters internal motivation and self-worth. Praise implies judgment. Encouragement offers support. Praise looks to results. Encouragement values process. In horizontal relationships, encouragement flows freely in both directions. Even in relationships with inherent differences in experience or role, such as parent-child or mentor-mentee, encouragement maintains the fundamental equality of dignity while acknowledging differences in development. Practical ways to offer encouragement include recognizing effort rather than just outcomes. I see how much work you're putting into this. Acknowledging improvement. You've made real progress in how you handle conflict. Highlighting character strengths. Your persistence really shows your determination. Focusing on contribution. Your idea really helped move this project forward. Expressing confidence. I believe in your ability to figure this out. When we practice encouragement rather than mere praise or worse, criticism, we create environments where growth is possible, where risks can be taken, where failures become learning opportunities rather than confirmations of inadequacy. As we conclude our time together, I want to offer some practical guidance for those seeking to build healthier, more horizontal relationships. First, become aware of the verticality in your relationships. Notice when you position yourself as superior or inferior to others. Awareness is the first step toward change. This awareness requires honest self-reflection. Observe your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in various relationships. Notice patterns. Do you tend to dominate conversations? Do you habitually defer to others' preferences? Do you feel threatened when others succeed? Do you avoid expressing disagreement? These patterns offer clues to your underlying relationship posture. Second, consider the purpose of your behaviors in relationships. Are your actions aimed at cooperation and mutual benefit, or at establishing superiority or maintaining safety in inferiority? Ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve through this behavior? What belief about myself or others is driving this action? What need am I trying to meet? Often, behaviors that create relationship difficulties are misguided attempts to meet legitimate needs for security, significance, or connection. Third, practice courage. Take small risks in being authentic. Express your true thoughts and feelings. Set boundaries when needed. Allow others to do the same. Courage grows through practice. Begin with lower stakes situations, perhaps expressing a food preference when usually you'd say, "Whatever you want is fine." work up to more significant expressions of authenticity, such as sharing a deeply held belief or setting an important boundary. Fourth, cultivate community feeling. Look for ways to contribute. Shift your focus from what you can get to what you can give. Each day presents countless opportunities for contribution. A word of encouragement to a colleague, assistance to a neighbor, participation in community improvement, or simply full presence with loved ones. These acts of contribution aren't sacrifices, but investments in the common good, which includes your own well-being. Fifth, practice seeing others as equal but different. Recognize that differences in role, ability, or circumstance don't imply differences in fundamental worth. This perspective transforms how we view disagreement. When someone sees things differently than we do, we can appreciate their unique viewpoint rather than feeling threatened by it. We can learn from differences instead of being divided by them. And finally, be patient with yourself and others. Changing relationship patterns takes time. We have all been conditioned by society, by family, by our own defensive mechanisms to function in certain ways. Transformation is possible, but it is rarely instantaneous. Remember that each interaction is an opportunity for a new kind of relationship. Each moment offers the possibility of greater authenticity, deeper connection, and more genuine cooperation. Thank you for your attention today. I believe in your capacity for growth and change. I believe in your courage. And I believe in the power of horizontal relationships to transform not only individual lives, but our collective existence.